Congratulations! You deserve it, because you made it all the way until the end of this course. That's just amazing. I'm really proud of you, and I want to thank you so much for staying with me through all this course. I really hope that you have learned a lot from all the lectures. What I showed you in this course will give you a strong foundation, and you are now able to build beautiful websites completely on your own. Now, let me tell you this. This may be the end of this course, but it certainly isn't the end of your journey. In fact, it is just the beginning. There is still so much more fun stuff to learn. Actually, I will be adding bonus lectures in the future about topics that you, my students, wish to learn more about. So if enough students want to learn about a specific topic, I will be very happy to add a bonus video about it. So let me know about that in the comment section right of this video. Now, once you're a web designer and developer, one thing you will want to do is to keep up with the web industry. Things are in constant change and there are always new things to learn. For instance, 5 years ago, no one even knew responsive web design existed, and today you simply cannot build a non-responsive website. So, the best thing you can do to keep up with all the new best practices, new tools, and new resources is to read web design and development blogs. There are plenty of them on the internet, and I put some of the ones I follow in the course ebook. Now, maybe you wonder what else you can do now to practice your new skills and even start to earn some money. Well, there are actually a lot of things you can do. For instance, redesign existing websites that you think are poorly designed. If you know the owner of that website, you can even show your redesign and offer them your services. You can also design a website for free for a local charity or something like that. Or go to 99 Designs and join design contests. You will make designs for different contests, and if you win, you get the prize money. And once you're more confident, you can start to do some freelance work on freelancing websites such as freelancer.com, Odesk, or Elance. You can find lots of stuff about these websites in case you want to start doing this. I would also love it if you'd stay here in the course forums, helping out others whenever you can and remain a valuable part of this community we're building together here. Even now that you've completed the course, feel free to ask me any question you might have. Now let me give you one last piece of advice. Practice, practice, practice your new skills. Please never stop learning, and you will achieve more than you can imagine. Dream big. I wish you all the best for your new career, and I genuinely hope that all those dreams may come true.
Hi, I hope you're doing great today. It's been some time since I last added a new video to this course, so I thought it was about time to do just that. So a lot of stuff has been added to CSS over the last couple of years, so this seems like a great time to show you a bit of what's new in CSS. So first up, we have a lot of new properties and techniques in CSS now. Stuff like more complex gradients, shapes, clips, masks, background blending, image filters, CSS variables, truly responsive images, and so much more. It's really incredible. And with these new properties, we can build even more compelling designs just using the power of CSS. So again, it really has become powerful over the last years. All right. Now, as for actually laying out elements on the page, for a long time we've been using floats to build layouts, right? So just like you learned in this course. And that technique is of course still 100% valid, but it always actually had its small problems. It was always a bit hacky, so to say, because floats were not originally invented to build layouts. It's also a bit difficult sometimes to build layouts and page components just using floats. And that is why amazing new ways of laying out elements were introduced into CSS over the last couple of years. and these are Flexbox and CSS Grid. So Flexbox is an amazing new technology that allows us to lay out elements in a one-dimensional row without using floats or other hacks like that. It makes it so easy to place elements exactly where we want them to be, with just a very small amount of code, making Flexbox perfect for building small page components like navigation or cards. Now about CSS Grid, it's an even more cutting-edge technology that we use to lay out elements in a fully fledged two-dimensional grid. And some people say it's a bit like tables, but it's actually much more powerful than that. So since we can use a real two-dimensional grid, CSS Grid is absolutely perfect for building big overall page layouts and more complex components. Again, with a lot less CSS code and even HTML code than before. Now, the biggest limitation of all these new features is, as always, browser support. While new versions of all browsers already support everything I mentioned here, there are always some users that lag behind and don't have the latest versions installed. Now imagine we rely on CSS Grid to entirely lay out a page, and then like 5% of our users actually don't support CSS Grid. That would then make our website impossible to use for these people. That's why we have to be very careful in adopting this new modern stuff and always have a really good idea of what our target audience looks like in terms of browser usage. All right? Now, since I cannot really show you all of this in just one video, of course, I'm only going to introduce you to Flexbox right now. That's because if I were to learn only one of these technologies, then it would be definitely Flexbox, because it had by far the biggest impact on my own personal work. It really makes a huge difference to me and my work, and browser support is actually pretty good right now, which makes it a perfect technology to start using right now, in my opinion. Now, before we actually start using it in practice, I want to just give you an overview of all the CSS properties that are part of the Flexbox specification. I have all the property names here, and then all the possible values, where the bold one is the default one, right? I'm not going to go over these right now, but it's a good reference for you to print out or create just a print screen image so that you can keep it handy and check it as we build our example throughout the rest of this video. Now, what I do want to focus on right now is that in Flexbox, we can define an element as a flex container, and then all the child elements will become flex items. Now, each flex container has a main axis, as you can see in the diagram in the top, and along this main axis, all of the flex items can be aligned in some way. Then there's also the cross axis, which is always perpendicular to the main axis, and we can also align items along this axis. And we can control all of this using the properties that you can see here on this slide. All right? But enough talking now, because this sounds more complicated than it actually is. Okay? So let's now actually build a very small component using the power of Flexbox in practice. So this is a small component that we're going to build using Flexbox. And it's like this pizza cart here. So imagine there was like a web application where you could order pizza, and then they could show each of their pizzas using this cart component right here. All right. Now, as you see here, I'm doing this on like a web application called CodePen, where we have the HTML and CSS code up here, and then down here we see the result, instead of doing it in a text editor like we did the other project in this course. Okay, so usually we always code in a text editor, but to code up these small examples like these demos, I like to use a web tool like this, because then we don't have to go through all these setup steps, and so it's a lot quicker to just quickly code up something like this. Now, if you want, of course, you can open up your text editor and then create a new HTML file and a new CSS file, and do it the more traditional way like we did in this course as well. So what I did here was to start a new CodePen, so this one here. And if you want to do it yourself, you can just head over to codepen.io, then you probably have to create a new account and then just go to new pen. Okay, now we don't need the JavaScript, so we can just minimize it. And so here we go, we have HTML and CSS. And let's start with some of the setup, just like we did in the OmniFoot project. So we have our universal selector, and then we will simply start by setting the margin and padding to 0. So basically do this reset that we also did in our project. So margin 0, padding 0, and also we set box sizing to border box. border box. Okay, let's just write something here in the HTML so that it actually shows up down here. So here we go. And so now let's define some styles for the HTML and the body, just like we're already used to, right? So let's set the text color to 444 like this. And we also want a special font family. So we want a font called Roboto, which is on Google Fonts. So again, just like we did on our Omnifoot project. So let's go to Google Fonts here. Type in Roboto. And so this is the one here. Just hit this plus here, and probably this now looks a bit different than by the time I recorded the rest of the course, but it still works the same actually. And so now we want to embed this font, and we're not going to do it in the HTML like we did with this link element, but instead we're going to import it right into CSS. So just go ahead and copy this line of code here. We can now close this, and right at the beginning of everything here, we then import this font to our CSS document. And now we can go ahead and say font family Roboto. And if we wait a bit, now you see that it actually changed down here. Okay? Can also give it some nice padding of 100 pixel. And now let's take care of that gradient that we have here. So this green to blue, nice modern looking gradient that we have. All right. So as a comment here, let's define a couple of colors because we will be using these over and over again. And so I think it makes sense to basically write them down here so we can then come here and copy them. So for green, we have 67B26F. Then we have our blue color, which is in hexadecimal 4CA, 4CA to CD. And then one that's kind of in between, so the mid color, let's say. And this one is 5AAA9D. Okay, so let's define this gradient. So background, and we want the linear gradient. And we did this also in a course again. So at this point, it's nothing new. So we define the two colors that we want, and we start with the green one. So we catch this one. And going to the blue color. Let's see. And here we go. Now you see that this gradient here is going actually from the top to the bottom down here, right? You see that? But here we actually have it starting here in this corner, going to this corner. And so we can do something that we didn't do before, which is to specify the direction in here. So we can say now to bottom right. And now you will see that it starts here and goes here. We could also say to the bottom left, for example. And now you will see that it will start here. So here's the green now, and then here to the blue. So that's the direction it goes. Okay, makes sense? But we want it to go to the bottom right. And to see this a bit better, let's actually give us some more space here and maximize this window. All right, so that's nicer. Okay, and so you see that now when we increase or decrease this here, you see that it kind of goes from here to here, and then it starts over again. And we don't want that to happen. So we want that our body, because basically all of this here is the body, right? We want that to always have the height of the viewport. And remember how we do that? So we actually did it before in the Omnifoot project. And the way we do it is to use the 100 and then the VH unit. So 100% of the vertical height. And now you see that it actually works. Except for these small problems down here. But we're going to fix them here in a second, so don't worry about that. So I'm not sure what's causing them. Maybe it's a problem here with this web application, but that's no problem again. Don't worry about that. So instead, let's just start with our HTML part here. And so I'm going to use a figure with the class of pizza. All right, down in there, let's see what we have in there actually in our example. And now the tabs are gone. Okay, so let's bring it back to the way it was. So we have this entire element here, which is this figure, which is a pizza, right? And then in there we have this element for the image, then this element, so this container, and then the element with the price, okay? So basically 3 elements side by side. So let's do that. So we have a div with the class of pizza hero. And now I'm going to introduce you to something new, because this way of writing a class probably looks pretty weird to you, right? These 2 underscores, right? And that is the so-called BEM methodology, where B stands for block, E stands for element, and M stands for modifier. So our block here is pizza, and then each of the elements in there will have the block name on them, so the block will always be there, then 2 underscores, and then the element, which in this case is the hero. And if we have multiple elements with the same name, but we want, for example, one of them to be slightly different, so be a bit modified, we can use a modifier by using dash dash, for example, type 1, something like this, okay? But here we just have our block, which is the pizza, and then the element is hero, okay? And this makes it a lot easier to write CSS class names. Instead of having to always come up with them, we have this system that makes it a bit easier for us to always name our classes like this. Okay, then in here we will have our image. So where does this image come from? Well, I'm using it from the very popular website called unsplash.com. So unsplash.com, and there we have tons of images that we can use. Okay, so I just used this pizza one, and if you want to find it, you can just type in pizza in here, and then it's gonna come up somewhere down here, I guess. Yeah, here we go. Then I'll just click here, and instead of having to download it, I will simply copy the image address and paste that one here. You see, and so now it will basically get the image from this URL. All right, so that's the image. We should probably give it an alternative text saying that it's a pizza, and then also a class name so we can actually style it. And this one is called, and again we have the pizza block here, underscore underscore image. Okay, very simple, very straightforward. Then next up we have the content, so the part in the middle where we have all the text and all the description. So this is a div with the class of pizza content. Let me just write it here, content, and then close it up. And then the last part, which is the price. Go ahead and copy this one. So pizza price. And actually I can already type the correct price in here, which will be $11.99. Okay, and let's now style this a bit, starting with the image here. So on responsive images, or in responsive web design, usually, we always want to give it a width of 100%, all right? And then down here somewhere, we have the content and the price. Okay, so pizza content and pizza price. And so now let's start using Flexbox for the very first time. So we're gonna do that on the pizza element. And now remember what I said in the slide about the Flexbox properties, that we can define each element as a Flexbox container. And so that's what we're gonna do here. So this pizza element here will be the Flexbox container, and the 3 child elements, which are the hero, the content, and the price, will be the flex items that we then can align using Flexbox properties. Okay, and to define a Flexbox container, all we have to do is to say display flex. And then, like magic, all of the elements will appear side by side. Okay, so automatically everything's now side by side, like this. So, awesome, that's really a great first step already. Of course, it needs a lot of work still, and so let's continue with that. And so I'm gonna put all of these selectors here now. So we have pizza hero. Let me actually copy that, so I don't have to write it out all the time. So we have the pizza hero, then we have the content, and also the price. Give it quickly a background of white. And the last one has also this gradient. So this linear gradient. But it actually doesn't go to the bottom right. It should just go to the bottom. Okay, now you see it starts with the green and goes down to blue. All right, and all of this here still looks a bit weird. So let's get rid of this HTML here. Actually, all we really want to style here is the body. And so it's no problem to do it like this. And so that looks a bit better already. Let's then define some properties for the pizza container here. So a max width of 800 pixels. So this card should only have 800 pixels. A border radius of 4 pixels, and then also a nice box shadow. So that looks a bit nicer. All right. So 30 pixel, and you can experiment with this as you wish in order to see a different results. So RGBA 0, 0, 0, and 0.2. Okay, so basically this is the shadow in the X direction, so like this. This is the shadow in the Y direction, so basically from top to bottom. This is the amount of blur, and this is how far the blur should come out of the element, basically. And then finally, this is the color, so a black with a 20% opacity. And you see that now we have this nice shadow here. So that's for the pizza element for now. Let's now fix the worst problem that we have here, which is this all too big image. Okay, so this pizza hero here, which is the element that holds this image, which has a width of 100%. All right, so this pizza hero, we want this to only have about 50% of the width of this entire container. So what could we do? Well, we would go ahead and say width of 50%, right? Or 45%, let's say. But when we're dealing with flexbox elements, we're not doing it like that. Instead, we're using the flex property. And the flex property can take 3 values, as you can see from your cheat sheet. So from this slide that I told you to print or to create a print screen. So you see that we have flex grow, flex shrink, and flex basis. And flex basis is where we define the width of the element if we want. So it's totally optional, but in this case, that's what we want to do. Okay, so we say that we want flex grow to 0, flex shrink to 1, which is the default. And then here, instead of auto, which is the default, we want 45%. Okay, and so now you will see that it only occupies 45%. Okay, then for the price, we want to do something similar. So 0, 1, and then the width. Remember, so the width is the third value here. And for this one, we want to have a width of 50 pixels. So it doesn't have to be percentage, of course. Okay, so now this has 50 pixels here. Perfect. Now, how do we actually make it so that this other element here occupies the rest of the space? Well, that's where the magic of Flexbox comes in again. So it is this pizza content here. And now what we can do here is to allow the element to grow as much as it can. And so here we're going to use flex, set it to 1, and that's it, and wait for it. And yeah, so now it has all the space that it can occupy. So what's not in the pizza or in the price will now be occupied with the content. And if this sounds a bit confusing, then please just look at the element table that I showed you before. Okay, so again, we have this flex property where the first value is flex grow. And in this case, we don't allow the element to grow anything. Then the second one is shrink. And we could also actually set this one to 0 because we don't want to shrink this element. It should always just be 50 pixels. Okay, but in fact, many times this doesn't make much of a difference. So here I'm going to set it to 0 as well because I don't want it to shrink. Okay, so that's what this 0 or this 1 means. And then finally, we define the flex basis, which is basically the width of the element that we want. But we can also not define all of this, but only define the first one. And then this defines the flex grow. So having flex or having flex grow equal to 1 is actually the exact same thing, but it's a good practice to use it like this. Here we could also use flex basis like this, and set it to 45%, just like this. But again, it's a good practice to always just use the flex property. I'm not really sure why, but that's how it's been defined. Okay, so the magic here again is this flex set to 1, which will make it so that all of the space that was empty before is now occupied by this element, because we allow it to grow as much as it can by using flex 0. So if it was 0 again, now we would have this. But with flex 1, it grows as much as it can. So let's say we had 0 here, and then the price, we would have the 1 now here, and you'll now see that it occupied all of this space here. So from here to here, all of the remaining empty space. Right? But we don't want that. We want it to be here. And so that looks a lot better now. All right, so this looks quite nice already. Let's get rid of this space here, and all we have to do is to say display block. So we had that problem in the other project as well. So always set images to display block. Okay, so let me now show you a little bit more of the Flexbox magic, okay? So remember that I said that there is always a main axis and a cross axis. So the main axis is in this direction here, that I'm moving the mouse now, and the cross axis is perpendicular to that, so from top to bottom, usually. We can actually change that, but more about that a bit later, okay? So this is usually the main axis, and this is the cross axis. And we can align items along these axes, okay? So let me show you that on the pizza element, okay? Just let's get rid of a bit of this padding here, decrease it to 50. Okay, so that's better, gives us a bit more space again. Can also decrease it here again, and so yeah, that's better now. Okay, now if we want to align these items along one of the axes, we do it always on the flex container, okay? And that's why in the property overview, I have some properties on the container side and some properties on the item side, okay? So on the flex items, we use properties like flex, okay? So remember, Pizza Hero is a flex item, and so that's where we use the flex property. But the flex container is the one where we have display set to flex, and this is where we can align the items. So let's start with something called align items and set it to center. And let's see what happens. And here you go. So you see that now all the items are basically aligned along one line here. And so they are aligned along the cross axis. So on this cross axis here, if you imagine this axis, they're now in the middle, so in the center of the cross axis. Okay, so that is align items center. So align items is always along the cross axis. But there are actually other values, again, as you can see on that cheat sheet. So align items can also, for example, be flex end. And so now they will be moved all the way to the end. Okay. There, of course, we have flex start, which is basically the top. And so they're moving to the top of the cross axis. Okay, so again, we are talking about the cross axis here. Okay, and the default here is stretch. So if you don't specify anything, they will be stretched like this. And so they basically stretch and occupy all of the empty space that there is available. Now, if you want something to behave in a different way, we can also specify the alignment on one item. And in order to do that, we use align self instead of align items. So align items does it for all of the elements that are in the flex container. And if we want to then change one individually, we can use align self. So imagine we wanted to do that for the price. We could simply say align self, and then this one here to center. And only this one will then be centered along the cross axis. Okay, so just like this. Now you don't want that. I just wanted to show you that we can actually do it. Okay, and so that actually gives us a nice tool to vertically center elements. So let's now go ahead and center this container here in this viewport, so inside of the body. So how are we going to do that? Well, it's very simple. We can simply turn the body into a flex container. And now this element here will be the flex item. Okay, and if we want to now vertically center it, all we have to do, as we already learned, is to use align items, which in this case is just one, but that's no problem. and it will now be centered. And you see, as I'm changing the viewport, it always stays in the center. Great. So you see that it's perfectly acceptable that a flex container contains only one flex item. Okay, so it's absolutely no problem, works just like this. And actually we use it all the time like this. So we talked about aligning items along the cross axis. But what about the main axis? So this axis. That is where the justify content property comes into play. So align items is for, and I'll actually write it down here, is for the cross axis, and justify content is for the main axis. Okay, so let's now again use center. And what do you think will happen? And actually, very simple answer. It now centered this basically horizontally along the main axis. Great. Now here we could also use flex end, for example, if you want it on the right side, and flex start for the left side, but that's not really necessary. There are some other possibilities and some quite important ones, but they only work if we have multiple elements, and so I'm going to show them to you a bit later. Anyway, I believe that these three properties here, or actually these two here, they are the single most important properties that you need to understand in order to use Flexbox. So if you know when to use these two properties, you will be way on your way to start using Flexbox in practice. And I know that this is a lot to take in and that it probably sounds a bit confusing, but remember that this is just a crash course. I just wanted to introduce this technology to you with a nice and simple small example project. But you should definitely go ahead and experiment and try everything out on your own after watching this video, okay? So we're going to come back to these properties here later, many times actually, because we're going to use lots of flex containers in this project, okay? I'm just noticing here that the border radius is not really showing, and that's because the image here is actually overflowing its container now. And so we did this before in the other project. We just had overflow to hidden, and that will basically clip out these overflows. Okay, so let's now take care of this price here. So this should actually have a white text and it should be rotated. So basically written vertically. Okay, and so in CSS, there's a property for that. And it is called writing mode. Okay, and so we can say vertical right left. Just like this. And so just like that, our text is now written vertically. You see that even the cursor here changes its position when we hover this text. Okay, it should also have a white text. So white and a font size of 18 pixels. And now we need to use the magic of Flexbox again in order to center this text in its container. Okay, and that's something that we didn't talk about yet, which is that if you define an element as a flex container that has actually no elements in it, so like in this case it only has text, well then this text basically becomes the flex item. So if we now say display flex and we say align items and set it to center, you will see that it now centered the text. And actually it did it in this direction, but that's because we're writing the text in this different orientation. So if we got rid of this piece here of code, so if the text was just normal, then we would see the normal behavior of it being centered along the cross axis. Okay, so vertically basically. But since we are changing the writing mode here, that also changes the direction. So the cross axis is now this here, and the main axis is in this direction. So justify content to center it in both directions, and now you will see it right in the middle. So perfect. So you will see this pattern many times where you define an element as a flex container and then simply align items and justify content both to center, and that will center all of the elements right in the middle. Okay, so that looks already pretty nice. Let's just take a quick break here, and maybe you can review the code that we wrote already and go over that property overview again to better understand the properties that we used so far. But the main thing that you really need to understand is the axis, so the main axis and the cross axis, and how we can align different items along these axes. And so for that, we so far used align items and justify content. Okay, so let's take a break and come back in a second to then create this middle part here using a lot more Flexbox. See you then. Welcome back to the second part of this quick crash course to Flexbox. So this is where we left off in the last video, and we already have the hero part and the price part ready. So now we're going to worry about the content. And just as a reminder, this is what it's going to look like in the end. Okay, so this is our reference, and so let's now recreate this using, again, the power of Flexbox. Giving us some more space here. And I will start with the markup for the first part. So in the content, I'm going to create the pizza title element. And in there, we will have the title and the two tags that I showed you before. So let's actually take a look at that again. So this entire element here, this will be the pizza title, okay? And so this will be the heading, this part will be the heading, and then these two tags here. Okay, so we have an H1. And this one is called pizza vegetal or vegetale, I don't know. And let me add the small emoji here. And if you're on a Mac, to get this emoji window here, you just have to type Control Command space, and then where is that? So that's the one I'm looking for. On Windows, I'm not really sure how to do it. And actually, if you don't like these emojis, you can just skip them altogether. Okay, I find them fun here in this user interface. Instead of using real icons, I just use these ones. So that is the H1, and then let's get these tags. So pizza tag, and as you may remember, there were two of them and they had different colors. And so now I'm going to use that modifier as I was telling you before. So we have pizza tag to style both of them, and then I'm going to add a more specific class to each of them. So this one is going to be the pizza tag, then dash dash 1, and the other one, as you can guess, will be the number 2. So you want to say that it's a vegetarian, and also that is Italian. Okay, so that's it for the title. And so let's now go ahead and actually style them. So pizza heading, and actually I'm missing the pizza title. Let me just go ahead and copy these. Title and the tag. And also tag 1 and 2. And these will only have one line of code, so all right. So first of all, we want to have these three elements here side by side. Okay, and so by now you already know how to do that. So all we have to do is to decide what the flex container will be, and that is of course the pizza title. All right, so that's the element that contains these three. So pizza title will be display flex. And just like this, they should be now side by side. They don't really fit because this text is super large here. So let me actually go ahead and decrease that in the heading. So font size 20 pixels. Okay, and now as for these tags, let's also just style them, and we're going to take care of the alignment and all that stuff a bit later. All right. So for these, we want a font size of just 10 pixels, so kind of small. We want them to be uppercase. So uppercase. Their color should be white because each of them will have a background color. And so for now, they will kind of disappear. So let's actually go ahead and give each of them a background color. The first one is green, the second one is blue. So where are we? So background color is this one, and here we have the blue one. All right. Now let's just give them some padding. 2 pixels on top, 7 on the sides. And some border radius. Something really large. It doesn't really matter. All we want is this exact look here. And now finally some spacing between them. So I'm going to give them both a margin left of 7 pixels. All right. So that looks great already. Now what we want is these two on the right side. And of course, they shouldn't stretch like this. And that's the easiest part, right? Because remember that the default value of the align items property is stretch. And that's why along the cross axis, they're now stretched like this. So we need to go to the flex container and say align items. And in this case, of course, we want them centered. And so what happens? Yeah, now they're really nicely vertically aligned with this title here. So without Flexbox, you would now have to like go ahead and add some margin to the top and really guess how you want this to look. But like this, it's so much easier. We don't have to guess anything in order to make them vertically aligned. All we have to do is to write one line of code, and that's it. Really straightforward, with really just a small amount of code. Now before we move on, let's give this entire container here some padding. So it's the pizza content. So 35 top, bottom, 30 left and right. And now all we have to do is to actually make these two, so basically push them here to the right side all the way that they can. And there are 2 ways of doing this. So let's think about it. Well, first we can make it so that this title here, this heading, occupies all the empty space, right? And that would automatically push these two to the right side. Okay, so let me show that to you. So we could say flex 1, and then just like this, you saw that these two were pushed to the right. Let's actually take a look at that in the inspector. So in the Chrome DevTools. So you see now it occupies this entire space here. Whether when we remove it, well, then it only has this space. Okay, now this is not ideal because actually the element should kind of really end here. Okay, so this H1 kind of should end here, where it does end actually, and not expand like that all the way to the right side. Okay, so instead what we can do, let me bring that down here a bit. What we can do instead is to give it a margin right and set that one to auto. And that will visually have the same effect, but now you see that that extra space is actually a margin, right? And that margin will always automatically take all the empty space and occupy it, okay? So let's say that this entire element here was a lot larger, like 900 pixels. Well, then you see we have a lot more space here, and all that space is now automatically occupied by that margin right set to auto, right? Let's get rid of that here. Of course, we want 800. Okay, so that was just to demonstrate it to you. So nice. Again, we used Flexbox and a couple of techniques to very easily achieve this great looking part here of this component. Okay, so I hope you really start seeing how handy this actually is. Okay, so next up, we just have this small text. Let me actually go ahead and copy it. And then finally, we will have these icons here with this data. So right after the pizza content, we have a paragraph with the class of pizza description. Then the text and close it. So pizza description. And I think there's something wrong here. Oh yeah, so I put this paragraph outside of the pizza content. And so now we basically have 4 flex items in this pizza container, but that's not where I want this to be, obviously. It should still be inside of the pizza content. So right after this one, actually. So let's see. And yeah, that looks a lot better. So let's just give this a font size of 14 pixels and then give some margin to the pizza heading, or actually the pizza title. So margin bottom, and let's say 20 pixels. Okay, and so finally let's create an element which will then contain these three elements here, okay? So these three like data about this pizza. Okay, so that is going to be called the pizza details. All right, and now in there we have then three pizza detail, so without the S. Okay, so three paragraphs basically. So one pizza detail, and now I will have a small span here for the emoji, so I can give it some margin to the right. So span class, actually just going to call it emoji. Okay, and the first one is the pizza emoji. And here it is. Close that one. And now we say that it has 850 kilocalories. And now let's just close it and copy this 2 times. So now let's use the clock. And here it is, saying that it's going to take 30 minutes. And then finally, we have the star, basically for the rating. So we have 4.7 out of 5. All right, so pizza details. And pizza detail. And also one class for the emoji. So first of all, put all the three side by side. And nothing could be easier than that, right? So display flags, and bam, here we go. Okay, now let's style the text in there. So we have a font size of 15 pixels. Have a text transform of uppercase to give them this modern look. Then a margin to the right of 20 pixels. We can also make them bold by saying font weight 700, and that should be enough for now. And we want these icons here actually a bit bigger than the text. So let's say font size 20 pixels, and I'm doing this so that we can use some more flexbox. Okay, margin right, just 3 pixels. Okay, but now you see that they're not really aligned vertically, right? So this is not really fine. So in here, in pizza details, we should fix that. And again, that's very easy. All we have to do is to say display flex. And of course, they are already side by side. And now just say align items, center. And here we go. Okay, and this already looks good. We could now experiment some more here with Flexbox. For example, let's say that we actually want to center all of these flex items inside its container. So the container is pizza details, right? So let's say we want to center them along the main axis, so in this direction. So we could do this and say justify content center, right? And so that would look like this. But there are actually more properties that I haven't talked about yet, so let me show them to you. So another nice thing that we can do is to basically divide the empty space that is left between basically the gaps of these items. So let me show that to you. So justify content, and it's called space between. And so you see that now this element goes all the way to the right, or actually to the left. This one here goes all the way to the right, and then the space here in between them is the same. So this one is centered, and so we have now the space all around these here all the same. Okay, so that is space between. There's also space around and space evenly, but I don't think these are really useful. Let me just show them to you very quick. And what it does is that each flex item will have the exact same space on its left and its right side. Okay. So space between, I believe, is the most useful of them, and actually you will use them from time to time. Okay, now in this case, we don't really want any of this, we just want them to be in the beginning, and that is basically the default. So flex start would put them exactly where they were. Of course, there's also flex end to push them all the way to the right side, but that's also not really what we want. So we can just get rid of this, because the start, as you know, is the default anyway. Okay, and now we're almost done. All there is to do is to push this entire element here, so the pizza details, all the way to the bottom as much as we can. Okay, so how could we achieve that? Well, it would be really nice to use Flexbox for that, right? Now, the default behavior for Flexbox is to put the elements side by side. And so we can push, as we did here, these elements all the way to the right side. Remember, we did the margin right and set it to auto here on this element, which then pushed these two all the way to the right. But up until this point, we only did this in the horizontal direction, which is the default, but we can change that. So we can actually make Flexbox not go from left to right, so put all the elements side by side, so that the elements go one after the other, and so the main axis, which was originally in this way, will then be from top to bottom, like this. Okay, so let me show that to you again, and in order to do that, I will now set the pizza content, which is this entire white element, I will set it to Flexbox. So where do we have that? It is the flex content. So I will say display flex. And what happens now by default? It will put all of these elements side by side, just as we expected, right? Because that's the default behavior, again, of Flexbox. But let's now actually change that. And we do that by using the flex direction property. And the default for flex direction is row. And so that's why we get all of these elements here in one row. But we can also change it to column. And then it's going to look like this. So basically, it's going to look exactly the way it did before. Okay, but these are now actually flex items that we can manipulate. So we could now say align items, which is along the cross axis, remember, center. So what do you think will happen? Yep, so it centered these along the cross axis. And since our main axis is now this way here, the cross axis is this way. All right, makes sense? And so that's why align items now works in this direction here as well. Okay? We could also do justify content and set that one to center and try to guess what's going to happen. Yep, it's going to put all of these elements in the center along the main axis, which now is, remember, from top to bottom. All right? So that's one very important aspect of Flexbox as well, that we can change the flex direction. We can also do like column reverse, for example. And what that's going to do is that it will reverse the order of the elements. So we had this at the top and this at the bottom, and so now it's inverted. All right, but we simply want it to be a column. Now what we really wanted originally to do is to push this pizza details here all the way to the bottom, right? And so let's do that. So pizza details. And can you guess how we're going to do that? It's actually very similar to what we did up here in this pizza. Oh, what's that? All right. So as I was saying, it's going to be in a very similar way to what we did up here. Okay. So all we have to do is to say margin to the top should be auto. And just like this, it should actually work. Well, it is in the wrong place. So of course it's not in pizza detail, but in pizza details, because that is the flex item, right? So margin top, and there we go. So this margin here is now automatically calculated by Flexbox in order to occupy this, this empty space. Let's actually check that out here using the DevTools again, and you will see that we have all this margin, as you see here in this orange color. All right, so that is the margin that is defined by margin auto. Okay, And so that was the whole reason why we actually used Flexbox here on that pizza content. Because without Flexbox, this margin auto doesn't even work like this. So if I would simply remove it from here, so if this was no longer a Flexbox item, well, then it will simply look like this again. And so I think with that, we're actually done. What we have now here looks exactly the same as it does in here. So let's count how many times we actually use Flexbox in this kind of small component. So 1, 2, 3 Flexbox containers, 4, and 5, and actually 6. So you have defined 6 Flex containers just in this small component. And that is enough to show you how powerful and how useful actually Flexbox is to lay out the elements on a page like this. And as your websites grow, you will see yourself using it all over the place and all the time. Okay? As an exercise, you could try to recreate the exact same thing, but without using Flexbox, and instead using margins and floats. And you will then see how much more code you will write and how much longer it's going to take you and how much more difficult it will probably be. So if you have the time, that would probably be a great exercise. Now, as I said in the beginning, in this small project, of course, we barely just scratched the surface of Flexbox, and there's so much more to learn, many more techniques and all the properties that it includes. But in this small video, of course, I couldn't do all of that because that requires an entire new course. And that brings me actually to the other course that I have here on Udemy, which is called Advanced CSS and Sass. And it teaches you all these new properties that I talked about in the beginning of the video, or actually in the last video, and so much more. So it has 3 different projects where you will learn to use all these advanced techniques. You will have one project that is only just for Flexbox, where you're going to code a huge design using Flexbox, and then also a project just with CSS Grid to learn the most cutting edge layout technology that we have right now in CSS. Okay, so give it a try, and if it sounds interesting, then of course I'm more than happy to welcome you in that course as well. So that's all I have to tell you for now. I hope you liked this video, and see you next time.
Hello everyone, it's Jonas, and I'm back with another bonus lecture for this course. And I know that many students have been waiting for this one, because in this lecture we will finally make our contact form work using some very simple PHP that I will provide you along the way. So but first, let's distinguish here between the client side and the server side code. So far, we've been using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, which is code that runs in the browser, which means that it's client-side code. Now, on the other hand, we have server-side code, such as PHP, Microsoft.NET, or the Ruby on Rails framework, which is code that is executed on the server. Client-side then interacts with the server-side. In our example that we will work on in this lecture, the browser will send our form data to the PHP script which is on the server. This script will then send an email and return a success code to the browser. So this means that this will only work if you already have your website hosted on a web server in the internet. So this will really not work on your local computer. So again, you need to have this online in order to make this work. So this is our HTML file, and maybe you will notice here on this side that I have these small icons now, and they're really handy to distinguish between the different file types. And this is just a small brackets plugin which is called brackets icons. So you can just install it and see if you like this kind of icons here. So let's just go down here to our form. And yeah, so here it is. So we will use a PHP file, which will be a script hosted on our server, which will be called mailer.php. And this is the script that will be executed once the user clicks here on this submit button. So I will now take a look with you at this PHP script. I already wrote this, and it's available for download right from this lecture. So as this is not a PHP course, I will not teach you step by step how to write this code, but I will of course go with you through this script so that you understand the basics of it, so how it works. So here in this first part, we have three variables which will have the name that the user enters into the form, the email address, as well as the message. And these functions here, they basically remove the HTML tags and the white space from the variables that the user enters. So, and then next here, these variables will be checked. So if the name that the user entered is empty, or if the message is empty, or if the email address is not valid, then we will be redirected to our website with this success code here, -1 in this case, and we will see later in the lecture how to handle this. So we will handle this with an error message. And after that, the script will be exited, and yeah, that's it in that case. So this is what happens when there is an error. So in case they're not, then the script will be executed further down. So we reach this point here, we need to define the next variable, which is the email address that we want the email to be sent. In this case, this is my email address, hello@webdesigncourse.co. And the next step will be to define the subject of the message that will be sent, of the email that will be sent. And next, just the simple content. So here we use these variables that we defined before, the name and the email and the actual message, so that we can build a nice email from it. And next we need to define email headers. This is something that is part of every email. It's not visible to the user, but it's part of an email that is sent. And then finally here is the most important PHP function, which is mail. It takes the recipient, so our email address, the subject, the email content, which is this here, and the email header. So these four variables are used by this function and are then sent to hello@webdesigncourse.co. So you will of course update this to the email address that you want the form to send the emails to you. This is actually a bug here, don't need this. All right, and finally, after sending the email, we will redirect to our website, this time with the success code 1. So this is the success code and not an error code. So, and after that we have this little part here, and what this does is to go directly to the place in the website which has an ID form. So let's just quickly add this one in the HTML file. So I will put this ID right here where I want the code to go then. So probably here is a good place. No, maybe better here actually. So ID will be just form. All right. So as I'm still here on my computer and didn't upload anything yet, I'm not able to test it so far. So I will now quickly make the success and the error boxes that I mentioned before, so that we can give the user a nice feedback telling them that their mail was sent or that there was some kind of error. So I will do that right here at the beginning of the form actually. So we use a simple div here, and I will call this one form messages. And we will do a separate classes for the success. So in this case, in the success case, we can say something like, thank you, your message has been sent. And now we can just format this in CSS like you're already used to do. So form messages, sorry. All right, so let's give it some width. Let's say, for example, 70% for now. And we want to center it. margin 0 and auto. Oh, one more thing that I noticed here right now is this red icon here. This is yet another brackets plugin, a very handy one. It's called the interactive linter. I will just show it to you so you can install it for yourself, because I really recommend you to do it. It is this one, interactive linter. So you install it and it will help you avoid bugs in your code. So in this case, it knows that I have some mistake here, and so it puts this little icon here so I can immediately find the error. And it also gives me this warning icon down here. So this is really great. It's really helpful and will help you making less mistakes, basically. So then again, back to our code, and now the icon is gone. Now everything is fine. So we can continue here with the code. Give it some padding, like 10 pixels for now. As always, we design in the browser. We just do some default styling, and then after that, we see how it looks, and then eventually change it if necessary. So we can have a nice border radius as well. Let's say 3 pixels. And then probably a margin to the bottom of, I will try 20 pixels. So let's take now a look at this. All right. So all the website as we know it. And here's our little box. So something doesn't look so good here, but let's take care of that later, probably. So now I want some background color here, and I will say that I want a green color for the success message and a red color for the error box. All right, so let's then define the success class. And all we need here is actually the background color. Sorry. Success. So the background color, and we want a nice little green. So I will just some random color so that I can now hit Control E or Command E on a Mac to choose that green color. So I should probably use one of the tools that I showed you before for choosing this color, but right now I will just pick some green color from this color picker here, and later if you want you can then adjust it for you, a green color that you like more or that is more suitable for your website, whatever. So let's just see how it looks like with this one. Doesn't look like anything at all. What's wrong here? Yeah, here it is. Of course, success was misspelled. So now it should work. All right. So it's a nice green box here. Maybe we could even make it transparent so that the map is still visible. Maybe this looks better. So again, I will hit Command E, and then down here I choose the transparency level. 0.9 could be great. Maybe even 0.7 just look like. Oh, that was too much. So 0.8. Yeah, let's leave it at that. You can always change it if you feel like it. And now we need the same thing for the error. We'll just call this error. And in here we will use red background color. So again, just pick some random color, and then here some nice red. All right, and then some transparency. And just to see how this looks like. Or we can actually put the same box below like this, because we will need it later actually. So this could be like, oops, something went wrong, please try again. So let's take a look at that one. That looks nice actually, but the text here should be a little darker. Actually, in both of them. So let's just add color 333. So this is a very great text. This is the most dark text that I ever use. I usually never go darker than this one. Yeah, that looks better now. So now let's just hide one of this one, and then we can change the height of this entire row here, so that the contact form fits the height of this again. So I'll now comment this code here, because we don't want to see it for now. And now we can go here to it should be the map box, but I'm not sure. Yeah, it's the map box. So I will change the height of it, say to 600 pixels. And then again I will have to change all of these, but we already see that it's not high enough. So let's change it to 650 pixels. Alright, and yeah, it looks better now. So let's now increase the map to 650 pixels, as well as the form box to 650 pixels as well. Yeah, I know it looks better. Now let's just for a second look at what's happening here, and probably we should just put this message here into its own row, such as we did with each of these elements here. So we have a row for this, for this, for this, and we will now use a row for this one, and this will hopefully solve this problem. So this, yeah, of course, should of course not be in this row, but instead it should have its own row. And of course this one goes also here. And here we go. Looks much better. And actually now we have this weird space here. But I think it would be best if we actually increase the margin of this message box here. So let's say to 30 pixels. And this was probably a little bit too much. I will decrease it just 20 pixels and then take another look at it. Yeah, so now it's better. Now the next step will be to show these two boxes according to the success or the error of the mailer.php script. So if you remember, in here we pass this code. This is a variable called success, and we define it as -1 if there's an error and as 1 if there is success. Now what we got to do is to include PHP right into our HTML file and then work with PHP here. And how do we do this? We just write like this, PHP, and then here we close it. And brackets doesn't like this, and it's actually right, because now what we have to do is to save this as a PHP file. So as long as you have a piece of PHP inside of your HTML document, we need to call it a PHP file. Alright, so the rest of this is still HTML, of course, but now we have this little piece of PHP here. So now these comments are no longer valid because these are HTML comments and not PHP comments. Alright, so what do we do here? We say that if the success is 1, then we want this message here to show, and if the success is -1, we want this message to show. So how do we do that? We just write if get success is 1. So again, I will not worry here about syntax things, because that is not my goal with this course for you. Alright, so I will just show you how to do this. And to display text with PHP, we use the echo function. And now inside of this echo, we will put all of this text. Right? And all of this text needs to be in quotes and then a semicolon after it. Since we also have the quotes here, we have to escape it. This is how it calls in PHP. And for that we use this slash. So this way PHP doesn't interpret it as a real quote. So if the success is 1, then this HTML line will be outputted by the code. And now we just have to do the same thing for the -1 part. So if it's -1, then we want this text. And here we need to change to error. Format the code nicely. And yeah, that should be it probably. So I will now upload this with this extension that I showed you before. And now we just need to wait a little bit. Alright, here we go. And now I'm ready to open it. Here we go. So now it's time to test the thing. So something is wrong here, and there's actually a good reason for it, because what we want to do now, what we want to open here is the index.php file. The problem here is that they're both the .php and the .html file on the server, so now we would need to go ahead and delete the old .html file, and then everything would just work fine. I will not do that now. I will just open it like this. So I directly open the index.php file that I want, and everything looks the same, of course, but now down here it looks great. So this bug that we had before is now no longer here. So let's just try this out. So here, just some random email and hey test. And now there's actually some bug in the code, as we can obviously see, so nothing's happening. So I will just go back and check my PHP file. And yeah, what I immediately see that here is the semicolon missing. So now I'll just upload this again, and here we go. So let's test this thing now, and hopefully everything will work just fine right now. So hey test message. Alright, so this message got sent. So no error here and everything worked as expected. So down here we have our email. So name Jonas, email test, and message, hey, test message. This is exactly the text that we put here in our script. So you see the subject is new contact from name, which is Jonas, and then we have the name, the email, and the message exactly as we have here in the script. So I hope you can make this work for you now. I know that this was an important part for many of you. So you had a great website and a good looking form, but it didn't work, and now you can make it work. So if you have any questions about that, or if anything doesn't work, or I don't know, if you face some kind of problem, please just let me know in the comments and post a new discussion, and I will try to help you as always. And yeah, I hope you like this bonus lecture, and see you in the course forum.
Do you want to sell something on your website? Maybe a digital product like a course or an ebook? Or maybe a subscription plan? Then this is the right lecture for you. I promised you web design guidelines in this course, but now you even get some guidelines to actually improve your website conversion rates on top of that. So let's go. First, you can offer your visitors a free gift in order to build trust, instead of trying to sell anything right away. A very popular choice is to give away an ebook for free, such as this website does. If the user likes your book, he is more likely to buy anything from you after that. Of course, you should have a strong call to action button on your website where you want your users to click. But instead of showing it just once, you should repeat it in more places on your website. The more often, the better, but obviously without spamming and frustrating the user. This website, for example, has the same call to action button here in the middle of this big image and also in the navigation bar. And they probably also have it on the very bottom of the site. Now, assume you have a sign-up form on your website. But how good is a sign-up form if nobody sees it? That's why so many popular websites and blogs use a pop-up box like the one you see on this website. All this does is to ask for an email address to sign up for a newsletter. And I know these pop-up boxes can be quite annoying for the user, but they are still so popular because they actually convert so well, which means that they do work. There are many solutions that offer you pop-up boxes like this for free. In your call to action button, you need to tell your user the benefit of clicking that button. This is extremely important. This website does a good job doing this. Instead of saying something boring like click here or sign up, they tell the user he should try the service for free. That works much better. So always use a verb which describes the benefit the user will get by clicking a button. If you want your user to sign up for anything, don't ask him for more information than you need. If you don't need phone numbers, address, or whatever, don't ask them for that information. The user doesn't want to go through too many fields in a form to achieve something. So forms with fewer fields definitely convert better. Social proof is a great persuasion tactic that can really help you increase conversion rates. This can be done in form of customer testimonials, if you have any, or showing that other companies use your product or service. And this tactic is so incredibly effective because customers are actually more likely to trust others than to trust you. So use this whenever you can. Two very effective techniques that you can use is to create urgency and scarcity. Urgency is when a buyer feels like they need to act quickly, and it's used in order to make people act now rather than later. The Groupon website does this by saying, hey, this deal has limited time remaining, so buy it now. So you can use words like now, hurry, instant, and immediately in your call to action buttons in order to make users act. This technique
together with that very big and clear call to action button, is extremely effective. Now, scarcity is the feeling that a product or service is in short supply and about to run out. And when there is less of anything, we actually tend to value it more. So this technique is also used to make the user act and buy something now before it runs out. Amazon does this quite well by saying, as in this example, that there is only one iPhone left in stock. So, urgency and scarcity. Use them when you can, and your website will probably convert better.